Hello, sweet souls. This is DTO in the flow. And today I get to interview Elia Nikolaev, and he is a yoga teacher, yoga therapist based in North County, San Diego. He obtained his first teaching certification in 2006 and has studied extensively in the Iyengar and Ashtanga lineage. He has studied in India in 2010 and 2013 in the traditions of Vishnu Ghosh and Ghosh College of Physical Education, and at Iyengar Institute in India with the Iyengar family and their teachers. Elia completed a 2-year training in yoga therapy with Larry Payne, MD, and Lori Rubenstein Fazio at Loyola Marymount University, including an invaluable clinical internship. He is also a certificated happy back yoga teacher. I'd like to hear more about that. Happy back. Love
hmm
it. Under the tutelage of Rachel um, Krentzman. Some of his most influential teachers and mentors include Roger Cole, Richard Freeman, Carolyn Belko, and Usha Devi of Rishikesh, India, teaching for close to 13 years, has amounted to hundreds of hours of training in both Western and Eastern methods of movement and wellness, and thousands of hours in practice and application. Being able to learn from a wide range of influences and methods has allowed Elia to understand and refine his own grasp of the subject and laid the framework for creating his own classes, workshops, and trainings. All right, without further ado, let's bring on Elia. How are ya?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. All right, let's dive right in. Question number
Good.
one.
Okay.
Tell us about your personal journey with yoga and why is it important to you?
My personal journey with yoga, it began, I don't know how far exactly to take it back because, I think if I can find all these connecting links, I could probably take it all the way back to my birth.
Mm,
But to save the listener a little bit of an ear beating, I would say that it was really sprouted in my early 20s when I really didn't know where to orient myself in life. I didn't have a passion, as it were, other than surfing, and I wasn't going to make a life out of that in any professional, sustainable way, I don't think.
yeah.
And I was in a what many people call just a kind of exasperated existential angst state.
Mhm.
And I've had bouts of anxiety and depression and just a lot of insecurity that were generated from this place of not really knowing myself and not knowing how I fit into this world. And I think from that place, my radar began to turn towards philosophy because philosophy deals with these questions of who am I, what are we doing here, what is the purpose of life, and so forth. And shortly thereafter, I found yoga when my mom gave me the iconic autobiography of a yogi book of
Mm,
Paramahansa Yogananda. And so throughout my life, I've reread that thing like 4 times. But I think that's where it really began. And so slowly, I started practicing some asana and a little bit of rudimentary meditation at home. And a year later, after starting my own home practice, I actually went to a studio. And from there on, I signed up to do a training. And the way that came about was also through more of a tragic occurrence. There was something that happened in my family life, something more in the matters of legal problems, and a family member basically got arrested and went away to prison for some time. And that's where I had to buckle down. I had to drop out of school. I had to find a job. And
mm,
fortunately, it was right around that same time that I was going to the yoga studio that I was just talking about, the yoga room. They they hired me. They hired me, so
mm,
I thought that was a great way for me to work, make money, obviously, and still be able to keep my practice that was just so nourishing on every level. And from there on, the ball just kind of kept rolling.
mm,
And I the way I reflect on it is it wasn't like I felt or I even feel still that I had a choice. It wasn't like I had like A,
Mm.
B, C, D. Am I going to get into this? Am I going to be an accountant? Am I going to be a surf
Yeah.
instructor or a yoga teacher? It was just, this is the only direction that seemed to make sense. And so
Mm.
that's kind of where the future unfolded from there on.
Wow. Well, that leads us to question two. What inspired you to teach?
Yeah. So, and that's good because that really continues from where I just left off. I think what did inspire me to teach was the teachers that I had in the beginning at that
Mm.
first studio that I went to, the first studio that hired me. It it was mostly, I don't want to say pressure to make it sound like there was coercion, but it was
Yeah.
really supportive pressure that was put on me to kind of step up and
Mm.
take up the reins on what you can effectively call my dharma and like my duty in life. And the funny thing is, I always objected when I was first at the yoga room, when I was just working the front desk. I always objected to teaching. I objected to even signing up to the first training because there was a lot of unsettledness still in my life, being that my
Mm.
part of my family was still in jail and everything. And
Yeah.
so I thought, like, let me wait it out. I'll still have time. I'm still young. I can still come back to teaching if I feel like it. And they just gave it to me very matter of fact. They said, like, look, this is what we're here to represent. We're representing a tradition, and we just don't hire employees to just come work the front desk that don't want any part of this life. And so we
Yeah.
want you to represent what we're representing, and we're all on the same team. And it wasn't even that I was asked. It was like, hey, you're doing the training. And that's it. And then after the training, there was like a 6-month practicum, which for me lasted a year. So it's like, you're just going right into that. I objected to teaching my first class, almost like kicking and screaming that I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready. I need more time. And it was just, nope, you're teaching. And I was just pushed into it from the very beginning. So yeah, I can't take the credit for
Yeah.
choosing to teach. I was really shoved very
Yeah.
compassionately into this position, and thank God that I was.
Mm. Well, when other people see a bright light within you, it probably felt like a divine obligation to say, Elia, this is your path. This is the way. And maybe you're looking in other directions, maybe taking, side roads in life, as you said, really into surfing or other aspects, which you could still have. But obviously, I feel since I've met you and known you, like your primary genius, and I've taken classes with you. And oh my gosh, anyone that's listening right now, I highly encourage taking a class. There's so many like methods and uniquenesses that you bring, which is question number three. Like, what makes your practice and classes unique?
Well, thank you for saying that.
Welcome.
What makes it unique? Well, here's the thing was for me, after I started teaching, after I was pushed into teaching at the yoga room, that first studio, it wasn't long before I realized that the curriculum in my first training was was not enough for me to actually be able to take up the responsibility of taking care of people in a class. Because
Mhm.
as you know, and as anybody else could see, a human being, a human form, is just complex. There's just manifold layers, everything from our anatomy all the way to our psychology and our consciousness. There's so many layers to constantly keep track of that it didn't take long for me to find out that even though here I was with the title and the authority of a yoga teacher, I actually didn't have what it took to be able to care for now what I saw a human being to be. And I
Mhm.
would get questions from students about certain anatomical principles that I had
Mhm.
no idea. Like, how does a student know about the name of a body part that I didn't know about?
Yeah.
And that was just unacceptable to me. So the way that I thought of it is like, I got to hit the books and I just got to keep studying. And I think anybody that gets into this field, when they start to become interested in more depth and girth of what yoga has to offer and how to support students comes upon the field of yoga therapy. And
Mhm.
so, for anybody that doesn't really know what the difference is between yoga and yoga therapy, you could just simply think of it this way: yoga therapy uses all the same techniques and tools that are implicit in the traditions of yoga, but it tailors them more to the specific needs of an individual. And say one individual might have just low back pain, another individual has knee pain. And in the
Yeah.
same way that we won't just apply the same medicine in Western medicine to those two different individuals, we wouldn't want
Yeah.
to apply the same kind of yoga practice to those two different individuals. So it was more about specifics. That's where I started to put my mind to, and that is the field of yoga therapy. So I began to study that. It was only about like a couple of years later that, as you read in the biography, in 2010, I took
Yeah.
my first trip to India, to
Mhm.
Calcutta, to the Vishnu Ghosh College of Physical Education, which was actually Paramahansa Yogananda's brother's school,
Oh, wow.
who in the Indian tradition was considered a physical culturist. And the interesting history of that time in India was that it was it was around the time that it was towards the end of the British colonization of India.
Yeah.
And so Indians at that time wanted to kind of assert their presence a little bit more to the British. And one of the ways that this was done was through showing physical strength and fitness. And so certain masters, like Vishnu Ghosh, they started training students on how to accomplish these incredible feats of strength. And something that
Mhm.
we've seen caricaturized here in the West, of like bending steel with your teeth and having elephants walk on you and having trucks drive over you. And so he really pioneered that in the late 1800s, yeah, early 1900s. Um, and he also was a yoga teacher. So that school was set up on this very foundation of Indian revivalism and the
Mhm.
Indian spirit of taking their country back. So that was interesting. I stayed there for a month and I studied their form of yoga therapy. And then later on, as you read, I met with Iyengar teachers, I met with Ashtanga teachers,
Wow.
Larry Payne, and Richard Freeman. Richard Freeman is
Yeah.
a traditional Ashtanga Vinyasa teacher, and Larry Payne, he comes more from the school of the Desikachar family. Both of them have Krishnamacharya lineages, which is another guru to them. And so it was really this integrative approach of how different, it's almost like different compartments of India, how they looked at yoga and how they looked at assuaging suffering in a human being. And so
Mhm.
I was just interested in all these perspectives. And it wasn't that I necessarily thought of creating a unique experience for students, but it was just really this zest for knowledge of how these old traditions saw the human body and how they sought to intervene in any suffering that happened therein.
Mhm. Yeah, that's powerful because I feel that in the West, there's, just get through it. Just, pain makes you
Mhm.
stronger and that kind of philosophy. And then, like the whole Buddhist philosophy is like, we're not here to suffer and we're not here to do that. And, suffering is something where even in like Mexican culture, they call it the llorona, like the person that cries and suffers. That's the person that you look up to, like the martyr. And so it's interesting,
Oh,
these
wow.
cultural stories and how we get to like be free and have like atma, and we're immortal beings, right? We're not here to
Right.
suffer. We're here to bring the light, and we're light beings on this plane that we chose to be here on Earth. And
Sure.
wow, it's really powerful.
Well, I think, if I could just add one thing to that, you're right that there is, and this is kind of outlined in the whole Buddhist Four Noble Truths. What's outlined is that there is a path to the end of suffering.
Mm.
But what is indispensable in that, and what is indispensable in awakening, and what any listener or viewer right now can probably reflect on in their own life, what was indispensable in their own coming of age, in their own next chapter in life, was some amount of disappointment and
Mm.
dissatisfaction in life. And
Yes.
it is true that we don't want to look for suffering. We do want to um, come to grips with it where we can, and we do want to mitigate it where we can.
Yes.
There is a What's taught is to have a relationship of more reverence to it, because
Mm.
that reality does actually spur on a lot of growth that we otherwise wouldn't have. And I'm just saying this because I'm grateful for that existential angst that I had in my early
Yes.
20s. Because if I just had my head inflated and just thought everything was all good, and I was partying and girls and
Yeah.
beers and coke,
Yeah.
for endless forever,
Yeah.
then I wouldn't have actually had the mental disturbance that I had, the mental lack of
Yeah.
peace, the emotional lack of peace, that made me look for different answers.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. That's a huge lesson for anyone listening to take in of like what parts of your life do you feel frustrated or discomfort, and it possibly is a way to move into and shift into a whole other realm of possibilities. Um, and
Sure.
I know you love music,
Mm,
and so my next question is about your playlists, sound healing. How does music benefit a yoga practice?
yeah. Well, I've had a funny track record with music, and when I first gone through my training, and a lot of the teachers that I've trained with basically have had a very firm stance on, we don't blend music with our yoga practice. The way that it's
Mm.
been approached in these Eastern traditions is music is a very sacred entity that
Yes.
you don't want to just have as background noise while you're doing something else sacred. So, in the tradition of yoga, the Yoga Dharma, uh, music was actually approached in form of chant and incantation. And some
Mm.
listeners and viewers might understand the word of kirtan, which is
Yes.
devotional singing and praising of God or reality. And the way that I began with my relationship to music and teaching classes was, I didn't want that to be a part of my classes, and that wasn't even
Mm.
allowed to be a part of my classes. But then as
Yes.
I went on, some studios actually required that I at least play something. It doesn't have to be, Aerosmith, but just something in the background will just kind of help students be a little bit, I guess, calm. So,
Yeah.
I thought, okay, whatever. What's the harm? No harm, no foul. And so I started again playing around. I initially started playing a lot of traditional music, again, like kirtans and chants. Um, just as an aside to that, it's good to know that it's thought that chanting and music essentially was the only vehicle that these teachings were transmitted from the past. It was before the time
Mm.
that people were able to write instructions down. These instructions were put together in form of a song. And so a song, a chant, was taught from teacher to student, from teacher to student, down the timeline. And so that it wasn't as easy to dilute a song as it is, say, a story or instruction. So it was seen as a way to preserve precise instruction in the form of a song. Because when a song and a tune, it has a certain sense, and if
Yeah.
you fudge with it, it's obviously going to be a different song. So that was the way
Totally.
that they assured consistency down the timeline.
Mm.
So that's
Wow.
actually, music is what the existence of these traditions is owed to, actually. So that's the interesting thing. But as I went on, as I was saying, I've played around from there, from starting playing around with chants and kirtans in classes. I bridged into maybe playing some rock and roll once in a while. I had a nice
That's
little
fun.
stint. Yeah, I had a really fun stint of playing blues in classes
Cool.
for a good
Yeah, that's a
while.
good blend. Yeah.
Yeah, and people really dug that. And then what I noticed, and here's the funny thing, and I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on it,
Yeah.
was I would play just some really sweet, like classical blues tunes, and things that would really vibe well with the movement practice. Nothing that would be discordant to like a yoga
Yes.
flow. And what started kind of making me think second thoughts about it was people would come up after class and would say, "Hey, like I love your music. What's that track?" And it just kept happening over and over again. And I began to wonder if maybe the enticement of the music could have been distracting people away from being a little bit more
Mm,
immersed in their body and their practice. Because
absolutely.
you could see how that could happen if you get a tune that really just hits you right in the heart. You could be so focused in on the tunes that you could
Yes.
unfocus from your body. And ultimately, I thought that there might be a danger there because if people need to pay attention to how to not hurt themselves,
Yes.
and instead
Yeah.
of paying attention to music, then that could be a recipe for pain. And so I veered into another direction, which is the current place that I stand, which is more of a ambient, slow-paced,
Mm.
electronic techno vibe. Um,
Wow.
most of
I
the
got some new music coming up. I can't wait to show
Yeah,
you.
like stuff that you play, right? So
Yeah, right on.
if there is lyrics and words,
Mm.
very, very
Minimal
moderate,
amounts. Yeah,
very
very minimal.
minimal, if anything.
That's that's my philosophy as well. As I've played for hundreds of yoga classes, and when there's a cue with the instructor, and then there's a message coming through with
Yeah.
language that people understand. Like if it's Sanskrit, then I think it can be more like background.
Mhm.
So instrumental, though, I love where you're going with that. It's like really great, especially for like a meditation. It can be really ethereal, or just takes you to a different place. So I want to have you first. I know I shared your website at the beginning.
Yes.
um, so therapeutic vinyasa, and so
Therapeutic
it's
Vinyasa Yoga.com.
yoga.com.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. So anyone that's wanting to go to Elia's website, you can go there. And one of the specialties that I know you're going to guide us in, I'm going to actually have you complete and close out our interview with is, and I'm going to put the website up for everyone so you can write it down, make sure that you have it copied somewhere. So here it is. Boom. Therapeutic
Awesome.
Vinyasa
Thank you.
Yoga.com. You're welcome. And there's a lot of different offerings that Elia has, classes, one-on-one instruction, a lot of ways you can reach out to him through his website. There's a contact button. And so I'm going to have Elia, first of all, I want to acknowledge you and appreciate your gift in the world and your 13 plus years that you're going to be going even deeper into the practice of yoga. And so I'm going to have you guide everyone into a meditation, and you get ready for this, everyone. So I'll have you instruct people what to do, what kind of posture to be seated in,
Okay.
and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. So I guess the most important thing is to begin just being comfortable, sitting in any kind of technical yoga pose on the floor, cross-legged or lotus pose, is not at all required if it diminishes your comfort. You can sit in a chair. It's usually advised against laying down because we have just this physiological association with laying down where the mind usually starts to drift into more of a restful sleeping territory if that happens. So you sit up and just kind of settle into your bones initially. Make sure that your chin is parallel to the floor. And then when you feel ready, just let your eyes close naturally. And natural in this sense means don't press them to close. Try not to squeeze your eyelids shut. You can refer to how we all have a natural reflex to close the eyes when we give somebody a hug or when we taste something very delicious. We close our eyes for a moment. When we hear some beautiful piece of music again, we sometimes close our eyes. And this natural built-in response that seems to be invoked when we savor an experience. And so having eyes closed, you just notice the structure that you're sitting on, whether it's a chair or a cushion on the floor, and allow the rest of your skeleton to funnel right down into that support. Notice the difference if your right sitting bone and your left sitting bone have a little bit more pressure on the chair or cushion, and try to even that out as best as you can so that there's as close to perfect symmetry as possible so that you're not leaning. You want to sit with a straight spine so that your chest, your breastplate, your sternum, it has a natural uplifting, that your chest shouldn't feel slumped. Relax your shoulders down off your ears. And not only having the eyes closed, just for a moment, notice, if you can notice, which direction your eyes themselves are pointing to. And you can try to either point your eye gaze down as if you were looking down at the floor, or turn your eyes up as if you were looking at the ceiling without turning your head, just your eyeballs behind your eyelids. And you'll notice that there's a feeling that gives you feedback. You know where your eyeballs are turned towards. And just pick one direction so you can anchor your gaze and thereby anchor your visual system. And this is one of the cornerstones of meditation as it's viewed from the point of somatic awareness, of body awareness. Is just to simply behold the orientation of your visual sense. And it mainly comes down to this. Without doing any specific breathing, you just allow your breath to come in and out however it wants to. Relax your tongue, relax your jaw, your lips, your forehead. And that's the main point of observation, is while listening and feeling your breath, keep track of that single direction, that single orientation of your eyes. And what you'll notice is as soon as the mind gets distracted, your eyes are going to be off that point. And so if you simply attach your practice to the visual orientation, your concentration will already be in place. Relax your skin, your muscles, relax your bones. And if you'd like to continue on like this, however much time you have, Just continue on. You don't have to open your eyes. Just keep letting the breath come in and out. And keep your eye position steady. And if you're ready to finish, you can begin to slowly open your eyes. And that's our little taste of meditation today. Thank you.